welcome to My Resilience Reveal with Lisa Sinnott. Today I have got Vanessa with P31 Home, and she is going to share her resilience life story of choice. As you know, life happens, so she's got multiple stories, but she has chosen one in particular to share with us today. So Vanessa, where shall we begin?
I think in order to share my story, which is going to be about being a medically retired police officer and how I overcame that to be where I am today, I think I'd like to just do a quick flashback to what got me here.
Okay.
So I am a survivor of abuse, and I did have the honor of serving in the Marine Corps between 2006 and 2010.
My dad's a Marine.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and back then I got to work at a combat training center. Started in supply, worked my way up to logistics, and then I became a Coyote combat instructor. And I got to help out a lot of those training exercises that everyone went through between, I'd say, about 2007 to 2010.
Okay.
So it was an amazing experience out there. Not for the thin-skinned at all.
I bet.
When I joined the Marines, it was less than 7% female. And someone can fact check, but I'm pretty sure it's not much higher. I doubt it would be more than 9% today.
Really? Still?
I think so, yeah. It's still pretty low.
Okay.
Though a lot of things have changed since then with what women are able to do now in the military. Then let's see, after the Marine Corps, I went to school, got a couple degrees in criminal justice with a concentration of human services, which is social work.
Yeah.
And then I got my master's degree in psychology. And
what drew you to that? I'm just curious.
People. I knew I had just gotten into law enforcement in 2012.
Okay.
And working with people and just seeing so many struggles with mental health, but then also behavioral issues, trying to understand why am I the way I am, and then helping other people make smarter, safer choices.
Yes.
I think that having a psychology background was a huge advantage while I served in law enforcement. And I had the privilege of being able to work with multiple agencies because I was a military spouse at that time. And so I got to work in Kansas and Oklahoma, and then now in Colorado up until January of this year.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So a police officer, that's a lot.
It is. And you know, before we go into some of the special teams I was on, I think the biggest thing with why becoming a police officer was natural for me is because I had learned to be resilient through my childhood and then my time in the Marine Corps. And as a mother...
Did you ever have a brush with law enforcement at all as a child?
Not personally. I tried to stay out of trouble, but did have a few situations, and I don't know how heavy we can get into things, but I did have a friend who was sexually assaulted, and I saw what would probably be considered a bad response in law enforcement that was not victim-centered, trauma-informed, offender-focused, which is where we're trying to go now in the law enforcement world, dealing with those kind of cases. And a few other things, friends who were suicidal, dealing with mental health issues. The response that we used to do is not as educated and forward-thinking as what is possible today. And I'm going to say what is possible because there's still a lot of law enforcement where maybe they're the guy who can spot that financial crime, and we want those people. Or maybe they're the one who kicks in the door. Or maybe they're the one that has a niche for domestic violence or sexual assault or more trauma victim-centered crimes versus property crimes or others. And I like to say it takes all kinds in law enforcement. I kind of giggle a little bit because that's the very first thing I learned in my first police academy. was you don't worry about what other people are doing. You only control what you can, and how someone treats you is more of a reflection of them, not you. If you live with integrity and you stay true to what your vision, your purpose, your calling is, whatever works for you, then that should be your focus. And though I'm human, right, so easier said than done, because sometimes words do hurt, I have put a lot of emphasis that when you get people that are challenging you, and I don't mean in a professional, productive, healthy criticism way, but you get people who are challenging you because they're insecure or they're threatened or they see you as competition.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's lower level thinking, but you know, it's out there. You only control what you can. And if you do that, you're going to sleep just fine at the end of the night. You're going to know that you're on the right journey. And if you have a solid faith base, whatever that is, for me, it is my relationship with God.
Yes.
Then I think that's what's held me steady during my life through all these different chapters. It's not easy to go from my childhood to the Marine Corps to several years in law enforcement, then getting injured, and then now starting P31 Home. It has been quite a journey, and I don't think I could have done it without my faith and without just focusing on what I can control.
Very good.
That probably sounds much better in like some of these really good quotes, but I don't know, just focus on what you can control.
Right.
And that's my best advice to anyone who's having a hard time navigating between those steps.
You were hurt in the line of duty?
That's why I had to have the retirement. And I haven't been in a place to really talk about it.
I have not heard this story.
No one has.
So.
Well, a few people have privately, but I'm in a position now that things have settled where I can briefly talk about it.
Okay. As long as you're okay with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I'm going to be vague because these are people's lives.
Yes, absolutely.
And real cases.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say the month. That way it's not, oh, I know what case that was. So in July of 2022, I was dispatched to a domestic violence assault in progress call for service. And it was a larger male who was being violent with a smaller female. This same larger male, as they were airing his description for the suspect description, is the same male I had arrested 3 weeks prior for domestic violence. I believe it was assault and violating a protection order. So this is not the first rodeo with this particular suspect.
And you knew him at this
I knew who he was the minute they aired him because of the description. And so I go to help, and that call had a lot of elements in it. But what I will say is that there was a foot chase part of it. And I am 5'4" 3/4.
You're tall compared to me.
I know. I'm actually above average height, according to Google.
My mama was 5'4". I thought she was so tall.
Yes, I'm 5'4" 3/4. But unfortunately, during this foot chase, one of the fences, there was a yard divider. And it was just tall enough that when I landed straight legged. So you know that feeling when you stub your toe?
Yes.
I had that in my entire leg.
Oh.
It was horrible. I had never broken a bone like that. And so I knew I was in pain. I knew there was redness, like a lot going on there. But I took a lot of Tylenol and Motrin. Maybe that's the Marine in me.
Yes.
Definitely the Marine in me. And we had so many calls coming in, it didn't make sense for me at the time to put too much thought into it because we were so busy between paperwork, warrants, all kinds of stuff that we were working on, emergency calls coming in. I think at one point I put lidocaine patches to try to numb it, and I did that overnight. The next day in July of 2022, we had a young child on the highway.
Oh, scary.
I'm not going to say what intersection, but it's on I-25. And he was running in opposing traffic. So all the cars were going northbound. He was going southbound. And this child was suicidal and making comments. And I'll leave that at that to protect him. Either way, get the kid off the highway,
Yes.
right? So here I come wobbling over because my leg is very broken.
Yeah.
And I get him off the highway and we get him back to his parents. Okay. So I'm like, man, I really am in pain. Tylenol, I'm still taking Tylenol, Motrin, trying to get through the shift, doing all my paperwork. There's so much paperwork. And we have all these calls coming in. And then while I'm at the station working on paperwork, I hear about a call not too far from where I am where they're asking for help. They had dispatched a ton of officers and resources to a drunk driver who did a hit and run. So he caused a power outage and rammed a few vehicles, and it was just a very dangerous intersection, and then he fled the scene. So when we got home, we got some phone calls and they're like, do we have any domestic violence SMEs? That's me. I'm at the station trying to get things done so I could go be ill and injured. And so I went on that call and muddled through it as best as I could. And we were able to get him safely into custody, into the back of my car. It turned into a situation, it was another veteran, so I had to use every de-escalation skill I had. But with him being highly intoxicated, I was very concerned with his health. And so before we could transport him, he was very volatile and was slamming his face on the back of my car, damaging his face. And it was a call. It required my full attention. But when I got to the hospital with him, there was a moment I got to sit down and then I was like, I'm like hurt because usually you're in adrenaline through all these calls too kind of helps you out. But usually you hurt yourself, you pull a muscle, and cops do it every day. Every single day, I feel like I either had a sore back because you're carrying so much gear, or if you have to jump a fence or whatever, you might be okay, but it does take a toll on you. And so it was very frequent that you would get a sprain or you would get some kind of ache or injury that you could nurse. This wasn't going away. So I went on one more shift. It was a half shift, I believe. Pretty sure it was like 5 hours. And because our shifts are usually 10 hours. And I was helping out our crisis response team. And for those that don't know, our crisis response team, they help people who are suicidal, homicidal, having mental health issues. We actually end up responding to a lot that are tied into substance abuse issues, alcohol issues, because they could present, multiple things. And it's a police officer, a paramedic, and then someone from whoever we have so like Diversus Health, the crisis center, they would send us. So they drive around in a little minivan and try to help people on the mental health front.
Which is so great.
It is great, but it is challenging and physically demanding because not only do you have to keep everyone safe, you have a team that is you are required to protect them. So you have someone unstable. You're trying to limit police presence so that the trained, trauma-informed officers and crew can best help someone with a mental health crisis. But there's very real safety concerns. I can't tell you how many times I went to a call where someone had a machete or something was going on and we had to secure the scene and then try to get resources or next steps or maybe even commit them to get some mental health help, voluntary or involuntary. And so that was a challenging job. But on that day, I couldn't even focus because my leg hurt so much. And anyone who knows me knows I don't sit on people's couches. I don't, because the minute I sit on that couch, there's going to be bed bugs. There's going to be like, oh, here's your drugs. It's sitting right here, or whatever. I don't, unless it's an environment where I'm giving a notification of something pretty heavy, or we're having a conversation where, I'm trying to be empathetic to someone reporting a crime they were a victim of, or
Yes.
like it makes sense for me to sit down.
Mm-hmm.
But on this kind of call, for me to sit down was highly unusual. And I'm leaning against the wall and I'm sitting down. I'm like, okay, I'm not okay. So I talked to a supervisor. I ended up going to OC Health, which is our occupational health, where people from the city go to get help. And I won't get into all the details because it ended up being from then until winter of 2024
Wow.
that it took me to have multiple surgeries, 2 surgeries on my knee. I need 1 more. And then on my hip, I forgot how many steroid injections, like the shots,
Yes.
PRP. I have had so much physical therapy.
Wow.
And it just, I don't know. And then there became a point where after and I still thought I was going to be able to go back, right? Get back in the fight, get back in the fight. I had been fine-tuning my skills as a negotiator, learning as much as I can on my own since I was on light duty going through all these surgeries. And part of me thought I would join a lot of my friends who went to government agencies with, very little letters in their name. And I thought that would be a good fit for me with my skill set. However, I made a joke to one of my doctors after my knee surgery, before my hip surgery. I said, "Hey doc, when can I run my next 5K?" And the doctor looked at me and he was like, "You're never running again. There is nothing more to fix. You will be doing replacements. You can protect what you have," which is what we've all been working, because I'm a mother.
Yes.
And it's been heartbreaking that I couldn't teach my daughter how to ride a bike. And my children are very active, and I have to sit in the car and sit down everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm.
It's just taken a big toll on me. And it was in that moment I realized, I'm going to have to retire. Like, I'm not ever going to be able to go be an officer again.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's a separate application process on top of the disability, get your injury fixed. What would we call that? OC health process.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the retirement application and that process with all those doctors. And so for a significant amount of time between July of 2022 up until, and I was still like having a hard time believing it until I got that call in November, where it's like, you're definitely medically retired and this is just life now.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
I could not have done it without. I had a lot of people in my life before I got hurt. And there were some people who checked in, who helped me out. Because I also took care of my grandma for 3 years after she lost her home in Hurricane Laura in Louisiana. And my grandma was like my best friend, the best prayer warrior you ever met. But she declined for over a week and passed away through hospice at my home. And so I went through so much loss and surgery, and just all of this roller coaster for too long of a time. A lot of things were drawn out because you have to have this doctor's signature and this lawyer sign off and this. There's so much that goes into an on-the-job injury that people don't see, to the point where I have had a lot of officers in similar situations who just quit and go work somewhere else. They never got compensation because the red tape can be very intimidating. So as I'm navigating that, I had friends and family who would check in with me. And then I had new people come into my life. Since I have ADHD for anyone who didn't pick that up. But since I was sitting down a lot with all these surgeries, I started writing a book series on different life topics about.
Tell us about that.
Well, that's before P31 Home. That's where it started.
Yeah.
So anything from domestic violence, grief, substance abuse, mental health issues.
Is it fictional or?
2 things in that. It's got a couple different parts to it, but the books are structured over 15 topics, and each book is 2 sides. One side is how you can help people, right? Real advice from teachers, nurses, mothers, fathers, therapists, lawyers, I have people who have helped me. It's a collaboration. And then the other
Yes.
side is what happens when the helper needs help.
Yes.
And so that's important to remember, because we talk about suicide in the military. 22 a day is everyone knows that number because of that one study.
Mhm.
But if you look at police officer suicides, there's actually no way to track them, because like I said, a lot of officers quit because
It's too much.
well, or they don't get the medical retirement, or they don't have that option. So they're like, well, for example, I went several months without a paycheck at all. There was zero paycheck. I couldn't medically go back to work. I was waiting on my retirement, which is quite the process. Lots of doctors, lots of paperwork. It takes several months. There's a lawyer involved. There's a lawyer involved for the other part. It's a process that maybe we don't talk about enough. And so several months without a paycheck. At the time, I was a single mom.
Yes.
So that's why you'll see most police officers, their credit is shot. They're living off of credit cards and savings, which is important to save.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing we need to talk about other than resilience. Save your money.
Mm-hmm.
Because that rainy day will come and you will never see it coming. So start saving now. But yeah, I had friends and family who helped me through that a lot. And I don't think I could have done it mentally or physically without them.
So you're writing these books
Yes.
based on past experience? So is it nonfiction?
So
Or is it a blend?
There's blend. And I know every publisher I talk to is like, we don't like blends. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to have to do a blend too when I finally start writing, because there's reasons.
There's a blend.
Yeah.
And the reality is, when people are being this vulnerable on camera,
Yeah.
there are things that you can't say because you want to protect your children, your family, your
yes.
departments, your whoever is in your life. And so sometimes telling a story is an easier way to get the message across and what you learned. And Proverbs 31, P31, in the Bible is one of the coolest chapters.
Yes, it is.
It talks about helping people who can't speak up for themselves, advocating for others. It talks about helping people who are struggling with substance abuse, alcoholism. Then it describes this rock star of a woman.
Yes.
She's wise, she works hard, she's graceful. There's so many things in the Bible that are weird, let's be honest. Some of that stuff you're like, I don't know. And then there's so much stuff that just hits home. And for me, Proverbs 31 personally got me through my childhood. It got me through my days in the Marine Corps. It got me through being a single mom. It got me through a lot of horrible calls that I went on as a law enforcement officer. And then when I was going through this unexpected medical retirement, really sad chapter in my life, and everyone was coming to me and everyone was so happy at these networking things. And I'm like, how the heck do you publish a book series? And then I'm realizing, like, I'm consulting more than I'm writing now. It kind of switched.
Yeah.
And but Proverbs 31 felt right. So when I met with all the powers that be who help you generate names for books and things, I just couldn't get Proverbs 31 out of my head, because to me, whether you're Christian or not, it talks about this woman who has qualities that a lot of women want to achieve in their life. And so I wanted to be approachable, because I take clients. I don't care what their background is. I don't discriminate. I take all kinds of clients, all different faiths, all the things. So P31 home made sense to me. Mm-hmm. However, in hindsight, maybe I should have listened to some of those marketing experts, because I have to tell everyone, I'm not a realtor. I will not sell you a house. I'm definitely a consultant.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I help people.
I could see that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a realtor.
Yeah.
Not a realtor. Not selling a house for you. But I love looking at houses. But no, I think that the best thing about P31 home is when we have coffee, it takes away, or we set up a meeting for a consultation or whatever the situation is, it takes away that stigma that when a helper goes for help, like if they go to the courthouse, they go to the police, they go to a doctor, they go to a lawyer, whatever, and they're sitting in that lobby, everyone knows something's wrong, right? And that stigma of, is this going to come back at me socially, professionally? Well, P31 Home erases that stigma, because when we have a meeting or consultation or coffee, no one knows what we're working on, and they don't need to.
Right.
So we could be working on a charity event. We could be working on a podcast.
Yes.
We could be working on one of the books.
Yeah.
We could be working on anything and everything. Or we could be having a consultation. And I found that that was an area where I could help. The best way is to go through my website, p31home.com. So p31home.com, no spaces. There's a lot of information on there, and please forgive me, I'm still learning the technology side of small business. But the website is the best way. And also, because we have so many different things on the website, there are charitable things on there and other things, events in the city that you can get involved in. So it's not as obvious that you're going for a consultation, but if that's what you need, you would just select crisis consultation and then give your information briefly. Don't put anything, don't submit me evidence or anything like that details. There. Yeah. We'll talk about that in the consultation. Just give a brief synopsis of what you'd like to talk about in your consultation.
And you help both men and women?
I do. Men, women.
Okay.
Anyone over 18.
Okay.
And if someone's under 18, I'd like the parent to be present. And if that's not a case, I may bring in a lawyer or a DHS worker, a former DHS worker, to help me do that consultation. Anyone 18 and over, men and women. Predominantly, I would say that a lot of people that come to me are small business owners. They are entrepreneurs. They are people who run nonprofits or work for one, or they have some kind of position in society where they're hesitant to go get help. And then the other half of that is the people that come to me don't always know how to ask for help. And so we can sit down and identify using our power words and kind of discussing different crimes or things that might be relevant. And I can help you navigate that and research it on your own. But at the end of that consultation, you're going to be empowered. You're going to have more information so that as you navigate it, you have more ducks in a row. You know which way to go forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.